Yeah, I tell you what, that's a scary place to ride that last 300 or 400 metres up along there, because at times I've seen 15 to 20 dead kangaroos alongside the road there, and when they come out fast. I'm out on the Classic 350 Reborn, and before we get any further, it's Australia Day here, 26th of January 2025. Around about, I don't know, 25, 28 degrees. Late in the afternoon, I thought I'd just do this quick clip. But before we get on to that, look how good this Classic 350 Reborn looks since I've painted the side toolboxes. Now, they were naturally black, and I've painted those orange, and it gives a really good profile now. So let's just swing around, have a look at it right over. Naturally both sides, but I think I've actually improved this Classic 350 Reborn, and I think it looks a lot better now with those toolboxes there painted red compared to the old days of just in gloss black. And once again, we'll swing around this side here, take another look at it, and there you go. So what today's clip's about is, over the last month I suppose, I've had half a dozen people ask me what they'd prefer to buy, you know, their preference. Would they be better off buying a used Classic 500, or would they be better off going buying a Classic 350 Reborn? This is a 23 model Classic 350 Reborn, and these sell here roughly around about 8,000 or a little bit more, depending on which trim level you want. And I think as far as if you're in the market and you're after a Classic 500, you'd have to buy one of those used. They come out in 2009, ran up to about 2020. And I think they'll cost you anything from, you know, say $4,500 up to, I don't know, some of them want $8,000 or $9,000 for them, but I wouldn't pay that much money for one of those. But anyway, that's only a choice you could, you know, decide yourself. But overall, if you're after a comparison, the best thing I could go on is three things that will separate these two bikes. Now, one will be... and this is the most important one for me anyway, would be on vibration. So if you look at it, say if you're after a bike with a lot of character and, you know, you like to feel like you are actually riding a motorbike, well, a Classic 500 with the 27 horsepower and the added vibration in the engine, foot pegs and tank will give you the feeling that you are really riding an old school bike. This one here, the Classic 350 Reborn, is way more refined and a more wimpy type bike, you could say. Now, before we jump to that conclusion, or that statement, the fact is I've had three of these bikes, and I really like the Classic 350 Reborn, where for some reason people are deciding they like the old 500 half-litre job, and I really don't know why, because over a period of, say, 2012 up to 2020, I actually bought 15 brand new Classic 500s, and my thoughts are, and you know, this is only a bit biased towards me at this stage, but my thoughts are the Classic 350 Born is easily a better bike than the Classic 500, because the 500, all it's got over this bike is power, or 7 extra horsepower, so it'll pull the hills a bit better. But overall, it doesn't look any better or anything like that. Sure, some of them have got a kickstart and some haven't. The very early models, they never had kickstarts. But there's no big deal. When I had them, I never used the kickstart much. I reckon I had some of those bikes during those period of time, never kicked them over once. So if you're after an easy ride, you go for the Classic 350 Reborn and you won't be disappointed. If you want a nice vibey one, go for the 500. Now, number two on my list would be if you're a bit of a tinkerer. And by what I mean by tinkerer, if you like to sort of get there and go for your ride, come back and do a little bit of work on the bike after you've done that ride. Now, this wouldn't be every ride, but say, you know, every 300 to 500 miles, 500 to 800 kilometres, you go over the bike. Now, if you've got the Classic 350 Reborn, like this one, it's going to disappoint you in that area because nothing ever goes soft on it, and there's no reason to go in it and do any adjustments in any of those areas. What I'm going to point out for the 500. 350 Reborn is just a bike you can buy, brand new, get on it, ride it, just put it in for the first service, get the tappets done, and after that just forget it, because this particular bike here now has done 5,000 kilometres. I think I've adjusted the chain twice. Anything around the engine side of it or the other parts, haven't done nothing to it all, except you know, they are, some of them, prone to having a wonky speedo with which freezes. Two of the three I had actually had that one. But if you get onto a Classic 500, that's a totally new ball game, and you'll find the more you ride them, the more you've got to get out of it, and you'll have to get down here in this bottom part of the motor here, and you'll have to go all over these bolts here, torque them up to what they are, back up here in the head side of it here, up there at the fuel tank. And more importantly, you have to be very careful on a Classic 500. There's a bolt that runs through one side of the frame to the other. If you tighten that too much, you'll snap that bolt off. And then all of a sudden you'll get, it's in that area roughly about there, but in the C500s and that, you'll see a rod. If you look underneath the bike, it goes from one side to the other underneath. And that's the one, if you put too much tension, it will snap. So the thing is, you've got to go all over these bikes, especially if it's a Classic 500, but these Classic 350 Reborns, they're nothing. You just get on them, ride them, enjoy them. Sure, they haven't got the power of the other one, but, you know, some people like the character of the 500, and you might say I liked it a bit too when I had them because, you know, I went through quite a lot of them. The best thing about a Classic 500 now, buying one used, because you really can't buy them brand new, is a lot, maybe 2 or 3 people have owned it before you, and they've sorted out any issues I'm going to come up with next. But if not, these are good things to look at. Yeah, so number 3 on my list would be, the most important would be, what can go wrong with a Classic 350 Reborn? Well, there's really nothing much you have to get up there and look at and do any time you want to. Like I said, I've done 5,000 kilometres on this, and I just get out, turn it on, kick her over, and away I go. Sometimes give it a minute or 2 to warm up, just to get the oil circulating through the motor. But apart from that, I can ride it anywhere I want to, on seal, dirt, anywhere, and take into account I have got the off-road tyres on it. They're Moto's Tractionators, which have got their good and bad points. The bad point with this, I think I've got a Series 1 Tractionator up front in the adventure thing, and that sometimes gives a little bit of steering wobble at 100 kilometres an hour, and you know, I don't go much on that idea. Plus, they are a little bit noisy when you're riding them as far as tyre noise. But on the other hand, the because of the tyres and how thick they are, and the rubber's fairly soft, like when you look at it like that, the best thing about it, it raises the seat height by probably 1 inch, and more importantly, the ride quality improves. So it's just like putting on a different set of shock absorbers. It softens it right up. Now, say, for example, well, no, I don't want a 350, I want the 500. Give me what's going to have to be done on that. Yeah, so if you like playing with bikes, and you've got your heart set on the Classic 500, these are a few things that you may have to look at fixing up on them when you've got them. Earlier on I mentioned that side of the bolt there, so that would be one area you'll have to watch and make sure you don't snap it. Number 2, another way to look at on the 500, would be up in here where your head steady is. If you want to cut out a little bit of foot peg vibration, up there in that section there, get onto Hitchcock's and don't buy a heavy duty stainless steel one head steady, but get a double one, because I was the first person in the world to use that double head steady, and it worked really well at getting rid of foot peg vibration. So if you keep that in mind, that'll get you, you know, in that area here. On the left hand side of the Classic 500 is the battery box. 2 things are going to happen there. Most likely your negative clip will break off and cause you a bit of drama, and then also the positive clip, it'll break too. So over a period of time, for the amount of vibration that runs through a Classic 500, be prepared that you'll have to get into that section there, and a smart idea would be to fit heavy duty clips. Now, another thing to do, if you're after a good overall battery for a Classic 500, a motor bat makes a good one. I think it's a 14 XU or something like that I used to put in mine, but they had good cranking power and cranked them over very easy. So have to get up. Another thing with the Classic 500, if you've got one of the early models, the early model ones had painted with a red shitty sort of paint inside the tank. Now if you're not real careful, after a period of time, and what petrol you've been, or other people have been putting in the bike, you'll find that that tank will, it'll flake off. The paint inside them will flake off. Not with these ones here. These have got a really nice clean tank inside. Come on there, boy. Nice and clean. But if you look at some of the early model Classic 500s, they've got the paint sitting in there where the, I don't know why, but they painted inside the tanks. After a period of time, it started to flake off. It'd block your fuel filter, and then also get into the injectors and sort of all sorts of problem, and then all of a sudden the bike wouldn't be performing too good and you'd be in a bit of a world of pain there. So that's something for you to look in that line there, you know, always keep that. Probably a good idea at times to pull those tanks and just give them a wash out, or pull your filter out or petrol pump, and be careful there. Another thing too, if you are removing your petrol pump, it's got a spout here where your fuel line goes into it. Always be careful when you undo that one, because a lot of people over the years have done two things. Pull that one off too heavy and then hit their hands on it, snap the little lead off it going into the pump itself. Or when they put it back on, put the tank down heavy, hit that piece and break the neck off the fuel pump itself. So that's one thing to keep in mind there. Now, if you want a better running Classic 500, first thing I'd be doing is check the spark plug that's in the bike itself. If it's got the Bosch spark plug, toss it to the shit house and go for a NGK BPR 6ES. Put one of those in. I used those from about 2013 onwards, and they are the best spark plug to run in that bike. And the bike will perform better and everything, so you'll be real happy with that particular spark plug. If you've got a habit of pulling the exhaust system off the Classic 500, and it's or you're doing it for the first time, if that original one's been on there for a while, it's more like a fibre seal in there at the header pipe, and you'll find that it'll fall to pieces when you go to putting it back together, and you'll get an air leak in that. Your best idea then is, if you're going to do something like that, contact the Enfield dealer and get a the new ones are more like a copper gasket. It fits in there like what's on Hondas, and then when you tighten them up, they compress and hold it all together. Now, another thing it's worth thinking about, on a Classic 500, out of all the bikes I had, they had one of the dirtiest motors from brand new when I was doing oil changes that I'd come across. Yeah, so they had all sorts of metal filings in it, and each time I did an oil change, didn't matter for the first few thousand kilometres, picks up all sorts of rubbish in them. Now what I would do, they got a magnetic plug in them, or a sump plug in them, but what I did, I fitted a rare earth magnet, what you can pick up off eBay, put one of those on the bottom, and that's got a more drawing power, and it also picks up a lot more metal floating around in the motor. So that's a good idea too. Now, if you ask about on the 500s what I used oil-wise, I never hit them with anything special. Out of all the ones I had, every one of them ran Penrite HVR Gas 10W50, and you know, I used that semi-synthetic. I used that on all the bikes, never had a problem with it. Still use it on this one. This one has got the same oil in that one there too. And while you're at it, and if you want to get your oil filters, just buy them in bulk from off eBay, and they bring them in from India, and they're a lot cheaper than the dealers, so that's another thing too. If you're buying a Euro 3 Classic 500, so they run up to around about 2017, they're easily picked. They're the ones with a drum brake at the back, because after that they put a different swing arm on, rear disc, and then Euro 4 they came into, so they ran dual channel ABS. Yeah, so back to the brake side. So if you've got a drum brake on this side here, be very careful when you're adjusting that drum brake, because there was quite a few reports in those early days of the drum brakes doing rear wheel lockups and throwing the riders off, and it happened, you know, not once or twice, but it happened quite a few times. So if you get there playing with that rear brake and you're trying to move it around, or it comes loose or anything like that, that is a problem, one of those. And that was my main reason I was really happy to go to a Euro 4 bike with a rear disc. But if you're going to buy one of these and do a little bit of work on a Classic 500, well, a smart idea in that case is buy a Euro 3 with the drum brake, because they're the ones you can do mods to, and they perform really well with mods, and on the cheap. You don't have to spend much money to get them to perform even better. So another thing on the 500, on the left hand side here, you have to be careful. Some of them, if they're really model bikes and they haven't done much work, take into account you could do the sprag clutch in and it could shit itself. You'll know that. You'll go to start the bike and it'll just spin, won't kick over. So that's one thing there. And the other thing is, sometimes on the bolts on either side of inside the cover here, they never tightened them down tight enough, and they come loose, and then all of a sudden they break and put a hole through the side of the case, or they jam the back wheel. So you've got to keep that in mind too. So you know, overall, hopefully that won't deter you if you're deep in your mind that you'd like to buy a Classic 500. But I'm only telling you as I see it, because after all, you know, you can't ride 50, or you can't own 15 classic 500s and not know nothing about them. So I think I went through a few of the things that may help you out. But as it is now, would you say, would you go back to a 500? I'd be in no hurry to get on a 500 because I can't handle the vibration and the unreliability of the bike. But remember, when I had them, I was riding them every day, once or twice a day, every day. One of them I put 11,000 kilometres on, another one 9,000, quite a few of them 5,000, and one total heap of crap I put 300 kilometres on, I think it was, and then sold it back to the dealer. And I won't mention that was the 2020 Trials 500, and what I can say about that bike, I actually thought that bike at the 2020 model was no better than the 2012. So the thing about these Enfields, they never did much in major changes. Yeah, so I think I'll close now because I want to get out of here and back home along this road before the roofs come out, and it's getting later by the sun as it come over. So, you know, hopefully I'll give you a little bit of information which may be helpful. If you want to give it a thumbs up, do it by all means, or if you want to sub to the channel. Or if you've got the odd question on a 500 you might want to know the answer to, throw that there too. But overall, I can only speak from personal experience after having, like I said, 15 of those new and 3 of these ones. And these ones here are the more relaxed, easy-going ride for me, where, I don't know, for some reason, people just want to chase them 500s, and, you know, they're just a bloody old dinosaur, I think, compared to this bike here. And I'm not just sticking up with this one. I really think my Honda GB350 is a better bike than this. So it's a better riding bike totally. But the only thing is, it doesn't look as good as this one. So you've got to say to yourself, what do you want, a bike that runs better, or you want one that looks really, really good? This one looks really, really good. Yeah, so I hope you found this enjoyable or interesting or something to that effect, or you got something out of it. You know, when you get onto the 500, you can do a lot of things to them on the cheap. There's not a great deal you can do to this bike. One good thing about it, I say, is a 500. They got lifters on it, but don't be misled. Like, people will get up to you and say straight away, "Oh, these 350s have to have their tappets done, and they're a bit noisy there at times." I tell you what, if you've got a stock 500 UCE running a total stock exhaust, nearly every one of those I had, I pulled that exhaust off so I didn't have to listen to that lifter bang. And what I mean by lifter bang, when you put up a few kilometres with the stock exhaust, you'll hear from a cold start that 500 rattles worse than one of these 350s. So as far as that goes, they've both got their drawbacks, except you'll never have to do anything for the UCE on the lifter side, where these ones here have to have their tappets adjusted. But, you know, something you just got to put up with. So thanks for tuning in. Take a look. Catch you later.